Planning a trip to Portugal? Whether you're exploring Lisbon, surfing in Ediceto, or road tripping through the Alentejo, staying connected is essential. I use Airalo every time I travel, even on some surfboat trips, adventures to the Maldives. So when we connected to collaborate, I was really genuinely happy. Airalo's eSIMs give you instant data the moment you land in a foreign country. No queues, no physical SIM cards, just seamless, reliable coverage. Travel smarter, stay connected, download Airalo before your next adventure. Follow this link in the show notes to get connected today. If you're looking to level up your surfing, I've got a couple of easy ways to get you moving forward. I'm running in-person coaching sessions here in Portugal with flexible dates. So if you're traveling through or planning a trip, we can lock in a few sessions and I can work on exactly what your surfing needs. And thanks to our collaboration with Surfrec, the AI robotic filming system now operating in Ribeira de Ilhas and Carcavelos, you can get footage of your sessions. Just send me 5 clips and I'll break down every detail for you. But even if you're not in Portugal, no problem. You can send me up to 5 waves from anywhere in the world. Surf trip in Indo, competition heats, your local surf break, even from wave pools. If you've got the footage, the film, I'm happy to analyze it. If you want to dive deeper into surf rec, check out Podcast Portugal episode 50 with Zoya Mesaric. To book surf coaching sessions, to find out more about our immersive surf training camps, online video analysis programs, and special JWC, Justin West Coaching rates for using SurfRec, head to justinwestcoaching.com. Direct links are in the show notes. This is Justin West from Podcast Portugal. I'd like to welcome Zoya Mesaric to the podcast this afternoon, or whenever you're listening to it. This is going to be a psychoanalytical conversation with Zoya on high-functioning distress, emotional truth, and the courage to change. Zoya, a big welcome to you.
Thank you, Justin. It's so lovely to be here with you. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. And well, maybe we can start off by sort of just a little bit of a background of what you know what you are, what is your profession, and then possibly we can sort of start to talk about the sort of high functioning. I found it very interesting reading your website, which is very beautifully designed, by the way. It says, you often high functioning people can often sort of appear normal, for want of a better word, but they can be also very deeply disconnected inside. And sort of, I'm really interested to understand what this invisible pain looks like and why it is so easy for people to go. So for it to go unnoticed, and so I hope that makes sense. That question. Forgive me for my ignorance on this topic, but that's why I like to talk to people like you.
Yes. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
So as you said, I'm a psychoanalyst and executive coach, and I do work across Vienna, Paris, and Lisbon. Right. Maybe first we start with a little bit about how did it all begin, huh? So my journey into psychoanalysis actually started long before I became a therapist. I was a huge bookworm as a kid. I was that kid, that read everything. I was even bullied for it.
No.
And one day, I randomly found the book of Freud. So that opened a door. But honestly, the reason why I chose this field was life, right? I grew up in a lot of intensity, and then I learned this way, very early on, to read a room before I could read myself. Psychoanalysis gave language to things I had lived long before I could understand them. Coaching came later. I realized that people don't only want insight, they want movement. They want to do something with what they discover. So today I work between two worlds. One, is depth, and one is action. And there is this idea going around with which I deeply agree that the real healer is always a wounded healer. Um, Very early in my career, even licensed professionals would ask me for advice. At first that really flattered me, but later I understood why. It's very, very hard to meet someone's pain if you never lived through something of a similar weight. At the same time, I'm classically trained. I went to Sigmund Freud University in Vienna, amazing, amazing university. And I worked in psychiatry, in forensics, with people affected by severe trauma, sexual abuse, psychosis, personality disorders. I worked with refugees, displaced individuals, children with early developmental trauma, migrating from war zones. And that exposed me to the full spectrum, I would say, of really human suffering and, of course, human resilience. But my real education, I would say, was my analysis. I don't know if you know this, Justin, but as psychoanalysts, we spend years, sometimes decades, in therapy ourselves.
Oh no, I didn't know. No, no, but
Yeah.
I can picture it because I think if you have a voice, you need to have an affinity with the person you're speaking
Mm.
with. You need to be compassionate, or maybe that's perhaps not the right word, but to understand somebody.
Yes, yes,
You
yes,
have to
yes,
have gone
yes.
through similar experiences.
Yeah, I mean, it's normal for us to have like 10, 20 years, behind behind uh it's really normal for us to do very long-term analysis, because as you mentioned, right, the more you know yourself, the more you can differentiate in the room, what's mine, what's clients,
Mm.
what's transferred, we say analytically, and what's defended,
Mm.
which is
I,
very,
I
very important.
I listened to some. I'm not sure where I heard it, but I heard something very interesting the other day that that how we play out our lives is usually based on the traumas that we had as a kid. So for example, if you were sort of living in fear of someone beating you, for example, as a kid,
Mhm.
when you grow up, you're always um, expecting or that potential to happen. So you enter into a room with a type of fear and looking around at everybody to see who can attack you. That could be manifest itself in a physical way, but also in a mental way, in being protective or having a protective barrier that that you don't initially trust other people that you initially engage with. You're sort of constantly analyzing them before you can open up, and that perhaps could take
Mhm.
years or maybe never happen.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes. Yes.
Yes,
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
very interesting.
Mhm.
It is fascinating. I
Mhm.
read a lot of Carl Jung when I was a kid, the interpretations of dreams and stuff like that. So that we definitely have something in common with being a bookworm. I don't think I read any of Sigmund Freud, but Carl Jung for me had this book with a moon on it and a wolf. It really interested me, especially the interpretations of dreams. And Tell me, these sort of I'm fascinated by high performers. You know, there is a lot of sort of
Yes, 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 yes.
debate these days in, you know, that
Yes.
CEOs are basically of huge companies and corporations are basically psychopaths. You know, that is something that sort of interests me.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, that's the clickbait, but there could be some truths in it that high functioning people are deeply disconnected inside, and I'm
Ah, yes.
fascinated to understand why that is.
Yes, high functioning people often have a very elegant survival system. Um, they look successful, right? But internally, they are very, very tired, even exhausted. They struggle with boundaries, intimacy, self worth, and the fear that if they stop performing, everything will collapse.
What does that pain look like? I mean, I mean, from your sort of, obviously, you can't speak about particular people, but
No, no.
sort of examples of how, I mean, how do people approach you with this? I mean, do they sort of, because I would imagine a high functioning person, firstly, doesn't have very much time, and secondly, like, maybe they're
Yes,
not aware of it. Maybe they're not aware of it, or do they just come to you when they're broken? But if they're broken, are they still high functioning?
yes, yes, yes. Um, yeah, maybe I should tell you, right, how I even started this integrating, psychoanalysis and coaching. Huh? What do you think?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yes, yes. For me, it was very natural, right? Because I believe as humans, we are very complex. And the psychoanalysis explains the why. Meanwhile, coaching gives the how, right? How.
Hmm.
And together they create transformation inside instead of just insight. And I had a client who said to me, why would I pay you for something you don't give me an answer for, right? And I thought for myself, honestly, fair point. Not everyone thrives in analytic frame because in analytic frame we don't tell people what to do. We guide them to discover their own answers. But when people are, as you mentioned before, right, in survival mode, they need structure now. For them, coaching isn't a shortcut; it's a lifeline. And trauma, as also you mentioned before, plays a very, very important role here because trauma creates excess energy, intensity with nowhere to go. I saw people become very, very successful and then sabotage themselves with addiction, burnout, really destruction of self, of others. It was too much for them to carry. So then I was thinking, and I asked myself, how does someone become great, right, without collapsing under their own greatness? And coaching channeled that intensity, right, into direction, leadership, creation. Um, so that was my answer, right?
Mm.
And
Mm.
also then there is this question, right? Another that I was thinking or overthinking for quite a while. What happens after analysis? What happens after someone finishes this treatment, right? When someone, let's say, it's stable, um, works, is able to work, it's able to love, can find this love life balance. What's the next level? And that's how I was then started combining these two. because it made sense to me, and I also saw that it was very, very positive for my clients. Because as I mentioned early on, like psychoanalysis gives depth, you understand yourself, and then the coaching gives the movement, right? And I really believe they two combined, or even alone, can really help people grow without them losing themselves. So yes, I don't know. Did I answer your full question?
No, that's it. It's very interesting. Just keep rolling it out. I love the way you're speaking about these topics. It's fascinating. So if I'm very silent, it's because I'm just in awe. It's very
Thank you.
interesting. No, I did read on your website something about somatic intelligence, and it's something that I didn't quite have a chance to research. What is somatic intelligence?
Somatic intelligence. Oh, in which context did I use it, if I may ask you?
Um,
Maybe when I talked about
y-
trauma.
yeah,
Uh,
how your work sort of bridges psychoanalysis, trauma theory, and somatic intelligence, and how do these sort of approaches come together in practice, and
mm,
why insight
yes,
sort of
yes,
alone
yes.
is not really always enough to
Yeah,
create sort of real change.
yes, 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 yes. Um, Justin, I believe that every client is a world of their own. Um, that my job is to understand that world before I decide how to work with them. So, very simply put, when a client comes to me, right in the beginning, I want to know how they live, literally. I ask them, um, how do they wake up? Do they eat? Do they sleep? Do they work? Do they have sex? What does a day inside their body look like? So you see here the somatics come in, right?
Yeah.
Because how someone lives tells you more than 100 diagnostic forms.
Ah, okay.
Yes,
Interesting.
yes. And then I want to understand their past, not as a checklist, but relationally. How were they held as babies, as children, right? How were they held when they were stressed, right? So when they were emotionally dysregulated, were they held? What shaped them? What brought them to me? And that's a very good question,
Mm.
because usually the answer they give me, right? The problem they say they arrive with is almost never the real problem. It's a doorway. It's the beginning. From there, we build a shared language. For some, the language is the body. We decipher what's going on there. For others, it's silence, right? For the first time, they're learning to allow themselves to speak. For others, it's naming truth directly. And psychoanalysis, yes, it's my foundation, but I'm not rigid about it. I'm constantly learning from doctors, from colleagues, from other modalities, from new research. I think that's very important, very, very important. And the method's adapts to the person, the depth stays. I think it's very important for people in my field to constantly keep on learning, because the more knowledge we have, not just from our modality itself, but also from other modalities, the more we can help a client I work a lot with trauma, and with trauma, for example, a lot of symptoms come with, let's say, chronic pain, right? And for that, I had to learn a lot about medicine to understand uh, the correlations, and the new research does prove there are too many correlations with diseases and trauma, right? So, yes, learning how to meet my clients every day better and better, I think it's very important.
Hmm. Can I bring you back to that point about medicine? You're talking about the sort of how medicine um, helps sort of mental illness or emotional problems and traumas, and if that sort of is that part of your work? Do you sort of have a do you feel that there is a point where medical indications or medical use is necessary? And what do you think? What's your sort of opinion on medications or drugs
Uh-huh.
a coping? Um,
Yes, I do work. I do work with psychiatrists. Um, so I think it's important. Like, I try to get to know as many of them as possible, because I do work with clients from all around the world, and some of them do need, maybe in particular at the particular point of their healing, they do need some extra support.
hmm.
So I do think that sometimes medication is necessary. Yes, but I
I've
do.
had some.
Yes,
Sorry, carry on.
yes, I do believe that. Please tell me. Are you an opposite opinion, Justin?
No, no, no. I've got no qualifications to have an opinion either way, but I do. I was sort of leading in my mind to some interesting interviews and conversations I've had with people um, whose backgrounds have been, stressful. Let's say that. I can't really talk too much more about their
Mhm,
backgrounds,
mhm,
but
mhm.
they used ayahuasca. They've used some different ceremonies, ibogaine, and these types of, I'm not going to say the new medicines because they're very old medicines, but they've kind of come more now into the zeitgeist for treating these types of things. And I mean, for me personally, I'm not sure that. Well, I don't feel like I need to risk that type of thing, but I'm sure some people, they get to a point where they think, well, I'm going to risk this because my current state
Mhm.
is such that it's worth the risk. Now I don't want to. In English, we have a phrase called "upset the apple cart." Like, now everything
Mhm.
feels pretty good for me. Of course, there is always room for growth, and probably my wife would tell you that maybe I should see a therapist. But at the moment, I feel pretty confident. I feel pretty grounded, and I don't. If I start to experiment with something like I can't remember the exact chemical which is in ayahuasca. But if
Mhm.
I experimented with that and then it sent me on another tangent, it broke my brain and rebuilt it in a different way that I wasn't aware of. Um, yeah, but these things have a grounding. And what is your sort of feelings of them? And do you think they need to be approached
Yes.
carefully?
Yes, I think that's a very, very difficult question you gave me. Because there is this debate is going on for such a long time, in my field. Do we accept drugs or do we reject them, right?
Mm,
Um, when we talk especially of this kind of psychedelic drugs, right? Um, I
the
I do
evidence
I
is
do I do
anecdotal, right?
yes, look, I do see danger in it, I do see a danger in it, but on the other point, I do know clients that their life changed after they did certain kind of psychedelic treatments. Their life changed for the better. So at the end, I returned to who the hell am I to judge, Justin?
Mm. I'm
If so,
guessing the evidence at the moment is anecdotal because we don't really know
yes,
what happens,
yes, yes,
DMT and what happens in these moments, and it's so complex. And
yes,
there's the anecdotal evidence, and the
yes.
scientific approach would probably be like maybe in all drug prescription. If you're at the point where you can't see any other, if
Mm,
you're in a closed room and you can't find any window and you can't find any door, then perhaps
mm,
taking that medication might
mm.
open your experience.
Look,
Um,
I heard really fascinating stories from people about their ketamine or MDMA treatments. But then again, I don't want to brag, but I did reach same results without drugs, in my clients.
mm,
So it's something I don't know, I think yes, my more research has to be done, right? More research has to be done for me to be able to answer this question.
yeah, that's a good
Uh,
answer. I think that's a nice answer.
yes, because I don't know what are the consequences. There are always
Mm,
there a lot of times there are consequences after drug usage, right? So I don't know how big are these consequences for the individual and what does it cost them, right?
mm. You talk a lot about how trauma creates a lot of energy, and creates a lot of um, energy, I suppose, that's sort of locked up inside, and I kind of find that quite fascinating because for several points. Because I also noticed that great sportsmen, high achievers in sports, tend to come from quite difficult backgrounds. And I know personally from myself that
Uh-huh.
I have a great belief that I feel like I'm quite mentally more stable
Mhm.
when I'm doing or post physical activity. It seems like that energy that perhaps we all carry inside us is
Mhm.
directed to something and released through physical exercise. I'm just trying to think sort of our ancestors perhaps would be stressed. I'm trying to think of their stresses. They'd be stressed of the future, what's beyond the fire pit, beyond their cave. And I think
Mhm.
probably staying in the cave next to the fire and stressing would not have been very helpful for them or for the family or for the tribe. And so perhaps they ventured out, and through that physical activity, through walking to experiencing to physically running and hunting or running away for something, somehow that burned that it got rid of that stressful energy. And I think it seems to carry on to modern man now. We our hunting and our physical exercises tends to be through sports or through the gym or through yoga or for whatever. And I feel it for
Mhm.
me, it's a great way to treat any mental problems that I have.
Yes, 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 I can imagine. Because trauma lives in the body, right? Not just the mind. So you cannot heal trauma with thinking alone. um, Physical exercise, yes, as you mentioned, regulates the nervous system. It reduces hyperarousal and helps people feel, in their bodies again, and also builds tolerance for emotion. For many clients, the gym or I don't know, movement is the first real experience of safety in their own body, right? When clients come to me, a lot of times they are not even insured. They don't even have health insurance, right? They don't know how to take care of their body. Some of them never been to gym, didn't do sports for many years. So I do see how much their lives change when they do start. I would say not even just start move their body, but when they actually start taking care of their body. when
Mm.
when their body starts to matter.
Yeah. I think like I think this leads me on to the sort of next subject that I sort of wanted to cover.
Uh-huh.
And you're gonna as a psychotherapist, you're certainly gonna read something probably into this. But I don't know. My background and my culture and where I grew up, to talk about sex is not a very easy thing, and I think what we're talking about sort of physical exercise and in as a treatment, and I think also probably I'm assuming sex and that activity with the bonding and the closeness and the relationship with your loved one or more loved ones. Um, could also be a sort of mutual healing process and perhaps then as a psychotherapist, a psychoanalyst, you can probably identify some issues or traumas if that sexual communion or that bond or however that's played out has got some irregularities. I don't have to say irregularities. Um, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's curious what you said, right? Because I perceive Portugal so warm and expressive, right? Um, you guys like to talk with your hands, right? You touch each other when
Yeah.
you speak, and I found this very fascinating. When I got to know Portugal better. It's
Well,
curious, right?
well, I was born in. I was well. I actually a little bit about. Probably you can. Maybe the confusion of that is from the fact that I was born in the UK. My parents are English, but I got
Uh-huh.
brought up in Saudi Arabia, so I saw a
Uh-huh.
lot of. I saw a lot of that type of subject. That that type
Mhm.
of privacy was there. So and then I went back to a boarding school where in the UK where also that kind of those things were not discussed. Some things that
Mhm.
happened around schools, which were a little bit confusing to me when I was young. Not didn't happen to me, but it happened to others. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, it's yeah. So I'm not Portuguese. My wife is Portuguese. I'm not Portuguese. So
Mhm.
um, I probably have that Northern European, I don't know, culturally, where we're not so, we don't hug so much. I'm always a little bit awkward when I go in to hug somebody, or I do it.
Uh-huh.
I'll,
Mhm.
I'll touch someone and I'll hug, but I'm also sometimes a little bit, awkward would be the word.
Mhm.
Sometimes I go to kiss somebody on the cheek, and it's like like Hugh Grant. I don't know if you know the actor Hugh
Uh-huh.
Grant. It's very much like that kind of stereotype. But the Portuguese, interestingly, they're very warm and but certain subjects and privacy about the family and talking about other people is very, very, I've noticed anyway, in the cultural identity, it's very, you don't really speak about other people. You don't gossip. You don't,
Mhm.
you suddenly don't
Mhm.
talk about intimacy, about the family or outside. So although it's warm on the surface and there is some, I think that probably stems from the dictatorship and
Mhm.
the political thing where you never quite know the neighbors whether they're going to tell the police. And perhaps that's also like an Eastern European. We have a similar thing from as Eastern Europeans. You're sort of afraid to express an opinion, or you're afraid to talk about other people, or in case you get somebody in trouble, you don't know who you're talking to. Um, yeah, sorry, I was rambling a bit there. There's a
No,
lot.
no, 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 no. You just gave me a lot of information, which is good. Um, yes, thank you.
No
Uh,
worries. So that's a bit of a
yes,
background of that.
yes, 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 yes. No, when you were speaking about display of public affection, right? I think that's very common, actually, for many people, especially when as you said, right, from cultures where intimacy is private, right? affection in public feels exposed and not natural, right? And it's not that you don't love, for example, your wife, right? It's that your nervous system learned that affection belongs to the private world and not the social one. And it makes sense to me what you're saying.
This episode of Podcast Portugal is brought to you by Flow Sports. If you're into jiu-jitsu, wrestling, rugby, cycling, basketball, and many more sports, Flow Sports have you covered. Stream live events, watch exclusive behind-the-scenes content, and dive into a world of top-tier sports coverage, all on one app. Don't miss a moment. Tap the link in the show notes to start watching with Flow Sports today. Yeah, where I grew up, in Saudi with the Wahhabi culture was quite interesting. And what I learned about it was that, perhaps what actually happened in reality in the home between husbands and wives was probably quite normal, but the actual cultural expectation of sex was literally as like a transaction almost. It's literally was purely functional to create children for and to build a bigger family. How probably the humans being how humans are, how that actually played out in reality was probably a lot more sensitive. But the expectation, I could be getting this wrong, but in the Islamic interpretation, the expectation was literally to treat your wife with kindness, to treat her obviously like as a good wife. But when it comes to sex, it's all about function. It is literally not even supposed to enjoy it. In fact, I knew many women, should we say, in Saudi who had pretty horrendous operation so that they would not be able to feel sex or feel any enjoyment or stimulation in sex, and that's a very real thing. And parents put their kids, their young daughters, through this operation when they're very young, and not actually that young sometimes, simply so that they don't bring shame to the family or they don't get into trouble by being misled by sexual desire or lust. And it's it's a very fascinating culture, and I think it's very private, and I think most families probably were just very normal, or just like any other family. You have your internal arguments, you have your fights, you have your love, you have your hard times and good times. But who knows? I would imagine something that you would provide, a psychoanalyst and coaching and therapy. Then I would imagine not many more traditional people from the Saudi culture would ever entertain the idea of speaking to somebody outside of the family, if speaking to anybody at all. So. Mm. I'm not sure where I was going with that, whether it was going to lead to a question or.
No. Thank you. Yes, I did. I mean, I work with clients from all around the world, right? I do have clients also from those regions, and
Mhm.
yes, I do. I do understand the complexity of what you just opened.
That's it. It's
Yes,
complexity. That's it. It's
yes,
exactly how.
yes,
Yeah. You
yes.
you boil you boiled all my rambling down to that simple and very effective word, complexity. Yeah, it's very complex.
Yeah.
All
But
different.
but but the idea that sex is a transaction exists in every culture, liberal or conservative. That's how I see it. Sometimes it's shaped by religion, sometimes by gender roles, sometimes by capitalism, sometimes by family expectations. Um, in many societies, women learn that they give sex and men take sex or earn sex. That is transactional, not relational, and And when sex becomes a transaction, people stop asking, what do I feel? What do I desire? What does my body want? Instead, they ask, what do I owe? What's expected of me? What role should I play? And healthy sexuality is not a negotiation, it's not a performance, it's not a duty, it's a meeting between two people who feel safe, connected, and present. And of course, that's very difficult to achieve or to have for someone who learned that they must lose themselves or perform to feel wanted, loved. That attention is love, right? It's very, very difficult, and
And
yes, it
and I
can be
guess
a
to give,
huge issue.
yeah, to give, I think rather than in the act of love is to take or to give, and how you make that balance.
You mentioned, right, the surgeries on especially women's bodies, that they try to fix their bodies to fit, the transaction, um, or or they're forced to change their bodies to fit in to
Yeah.
under the mask of that's for your safety, right? If I understood you correctly.
Yeah, I mean, basically, they would remove the clitoris, so that there was no feeling. I guess the idea being that if you created this pleasure, then you would unleash unleash your daughter or your girl, to or your wife, in fact, to then lust more and therefore seek, perhaps, I don't know, more
Yeah, I mean,
vivacious relationships
true.
that would embarrass the family or shame the.
Mm, Look, clitoral removal is one of the most profound examples, right, of how sexuality becomes controlled through the body. Um, I want to speak about this with a lot of respect, right? But because no woman chooses this for herself, it is something done to her long before she has a voice. And psychologically, it is not just the removal of a body part, it's the removal of permission for pleasure, desire, agency. What the woman loses is not only sensation, she loses the message that her sexuality belongs to her. And yet, this is important. Many women who went through this are incredibly strong. Some become deeply embodied, some reclaim sexuality in other ways. Some build intimacy through emotion rather than sensation. So I never reduce these women to victims. They are survivors of
Just.
something done in the name of culture, purity, protection, values that were meant to help, but actually they cause them harm, right?
Mm, interesting. And so from that they build strength, and they adapt, and they're survivors. I like that. I really like that. Um,
Yes, 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 yes.
i-
Look, clinically, right? The trauma here is not only physical, it's also symbolic. It tells a little girl, your desire is dangerous. Your pleasure must be controlled. And that leaves a deep, deep mark on her identity. Healing happens when a woman slowly reclaims ownership of her body, even if her anatomy was altered. Because sexuality is not only physiology, it's connection, agency, as I said before, presence, meaning, and what was taken from her body, right, can still be returned to the self through dignity, safety, and the right to feel. Um, Her right to feel was taken away, Justin.
Mm, yeah. I could not even begin to sort of comprehend that it's really frightening actually. I would also guess, for me personally, in my view of the world, if or not, I don't really, I'm not sure on the whole God question, and that's another story for another podcast. But if God created us human beings, what would give the human the right to alter that creation?
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
There would be there would be God's purpose in our design. That is, I always put that sort of, question to people who, believe in these things. Um, you know.
Yes, yes.
So for someone, on another subject, for someone listening who feels like something is misaligned, but they can't quite sort of name it and they can't put their finger on it, is a English saying. What is the sort of the first internal shift that allows real
Mhm.
transformation to begin?
I was preparing a lecture, right, for the World Congress for Psychotherapy, and when I was doing that, I realized that breakthroughs are not dramatic moments, right? Shame doesn't disappear in one insight. Uh, Sometimes the first shift comes through sensation. So, beginning of this so-called breakthrough, right? Sometimes it starts with sensation, a, a breath losing, a color, a sound, one precise memory returning. It can be a very, very small but profound shift. And that's one thing, right? That it's also very important, right? When you work with, let's say, a client who had an, let's say, early violation, early sexual abuse. Um, it's what is really important here is that to understand that the client doesn't only need to feel safe with you, but the client must feel safe in their life too, to go there. Because if someone is, let's say, financially unstable, physically unwell, or still in contact with people who harm them, which statistics show us a very sad reality, right? That actually, so individual who is, let's say, was sexually violated, abused by a family member, right? And they hid that abuse deeply somewhere in their psyche. They are still in contact with the person who abused them. It's very hard for them to, how can they open this topic? How can they allow themselves to remember that memory when they need to perform that everything is okay and have a relationship with that person, right? It's It's very, very difficult. Um, so there are many reasons, right? Before this breakthrough can happen, there are many conditions. I don't know how else to name it. Maybe condition fits better. There are many conditions that need to be achieved before a person can allow themselves to remember. Breakthroughs happen when, I would say, when a psychotherapeutic relationship and yes, real life becomes safe enough. And only then can the mind, right, finally consider I was not the problem and what happened to me wasn't my fault.
Get you rightly. Sometimes people don't even, if they were abused when they were very young, they don't even remember it. Is that right? They don't even. They just have a trauma, but they don't remember the moment or they lock it up and put it away so deep inside their psyche that until they feel the body or the mind feels ready to approach what it
Mhm.
locked away in the psyche.
Mhm.
Um, okay, I didn't know that. That was amazing.
Yeah.
I always imagined that people would know what happened to them. It would be a memory that's imprinted, and um,
No.
or perhaps they do in some ways, or they don't. But it's something they lock away. They don't. They forget about it basically to cope.
Well, yeah, look, people don't forget early sexual abuse because it was not important. They
Mm.
forget because the nervous system wasn't developed enough to handle what happened, right? When trauma happens very early, before the language, before narrative memory, the brain protects the child. It stores the experience in the body, not in the words. So instead of remembering a story, the person remembers through symptoms, through shame, fear, panic,
Sexual
avoidance,
sexual issues.
body reactions, yeah, possible relationship patterns, right? Issues, also nightmares. So for a young child, the silence becomes the survival, right? And let's say if the abuser is someone, as I mentioned before, that they depend on, the mind has to hide the truth in order to keep the attachment.
Right.
So, here, this is them saving themselves. Ah, that opens already a new topic for us. So then, yeah, the child that forgets not because it didn't happen, but because remembering would destroy their world, right?
Wow.
And now if I want to be very precise, like these memories return later, right? As sensation, images, flashbacks, or emotional reactions that don't make sense to the client. They cannot
Mm.
comprehend what's happening to them, but they feel there's something wrong. Usually they say, okay, I'm the problem, right? They think there's something wrong with them. And then there's this whole process, right, of them understanding that they are not the problem, that what happened to them is wrong, deeply, deeply wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. So and how does that play out? Because you often hear that sort of people who were abused as children also reenact that abuse on other kids when they're older.
Mm, mm, mm,
Is
yeah.
do you think that's a theory which is sort of a little bit
Look,
incorrect?
I worked in forensics, I worked in forensic section of psychiatry and in prison. I did see it with my own eyes how an abused child can become a prepper, actually the one causing abuse. It's
Mm.
of course it's a possibility, but it's the reaction after sexual abuse can be very different. Very different. A person can become hypersexual. They can become frigid. There's no rule of how someone will develop after such
Yeah.
trauma. There's no rule. I
But
don't
that,
think we can say, okay, now because someone was sexually abused, they will abuse others. I think that's cruel.
but you say there is a standard in that most people are not aware of it, that it happened to them when they were younger.
I mean, research does show us that, yeah, a lot of people don't. Yes,
So how do you,
and it makes sense why.
and how do you know, as a therapist and as a psychoanalyst, how do you know um, that people are not remembering something that didn't actually happen, but using that memory to give excuse to the pain that they're feeling in general life? Is that also a possibility?
Mhm. What do you mean?
I mean, like, so if somebody is um, comes to you with a feeling not great,
Mhm.
um, but they have no memory of a sexual abuse when they were a child, but then as a result of therapy or a result of of whatever, of reading or conversations with you, they start to feel that maybe they did have a sexual abuse when they're younger, but perhaps they never did, but they attach themselves to that idea, because then it helps them cope with the fact that they're miserable in their current life, or they suffer problems in their current life. So they're trying to find an excuse in their past, an abuse, or their mother didn't love them, or a hardship or a trauma. They use it as an excuse. They almost use other people's traumas as an idea to give them an excuse to behave in a particular way um, in their current state. Am I sort of making the point clear enough? I don't know.
Well,
It's dangerous, right? It's dangerous because you
look,
can
I
have
think,
people who are manipulative, and they'll excuse their current behavior by giving an excuse that, or attaching themselves to an idea, or an imagination that something happened to them in the past.
mm, 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 mm. Really depends. I think it's really it's hard to generalize that. I think it's
Mm,
people. People are so different.
yeah,
I can imagine such a case. Yes, but
but you as an analyst, you obviously have the structures in place to understand when somebody is making this up,
yes.
or
Yeah.
creating a fantasy, or that they actually did in reality. Because if they don't remember, how do we have any evidence?
Yes, yes. Well, that's the thing. I do, Justin. I don't question them. I
Mm.
don't. I don't question. I don't
So,
question their reality.
mm.
It's. It's.
So it could be.
I allow them. I meet them in their reality. I allow them to, for the first time, for many of them, to actually feel safe with someone, to actually express their story and not feel judged or shamed
Mm.
for it. Um, and that's already groundbreaking.
Yeah, that's
Be-
interesting. That's a great
because
answer.
just your
You
question,
never
right,
know, right?
your question shows, like this skepticism, right? So, uh, like, I think it's so hard for people to comprehend still, like that so many people as children now, like, are going through such cruel,
Mm.
cruel violations, right? abuses, and I think it's very hard for people to stomach that. And that doesn't mean, if that's hard for people to stomach that we should now say, prove to me that this happened to you. No, I believe you that this happened to you.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Why it's it's very heavy. I'm just thinking here, and I almost need to breathe for to a minute to
Sorry.
to let all this sink in. Like
Yeah,
um,
I'm in between work, so I just invited you in my head.
yeah. I mean, because I do come from let's say cultural, almost a family culture. From my own perspective, it's the only way I can ever really assume or think about these things. I come from um, this idea that if you think too much about yourself, you self-analyze too much, or you start to think about what happened to you in the past, you are being self-indulgent. And the most important thing, this is my culture,
Mhm.
my family, my familiar culture. It's like, okay, you just pick up the pieces and you just keep moving forward. There is nothing to gain by overthinking the past. You can't change it. You can't do anything about it. It's like, pick up the pieces now, strengthen, fortitude take a deep breath, swallow the pain, and get up and fight for another day, another week, another year. That's the kind of influence I had growing up from family, from the type of boarding school I went to. It was very much like, toughen up. Other people have much bigger problems than you, and you must just keep going ahead and trying to help other people as much as you can. But
Mhm.
you're not going to be able to help anybody if you're worried so much about yourself. Um, I don't know whether that's a wrong or right, or there is no wrong or right, I guess.
Well,
It's
that's
just
the
another way.
question, right, Justin? What do you think? How did it influence your life, right? How did this mindset, what you were taught or conditioned, how do you think it influenced you, right? If you think it influenced you with more negativity than positivity, then yeah, it's an issue, right? If you
Yeah.
think it didn't, then it's not, right? It's all based to you, right?
Hmm.
And I think what you're describing, and yeah, it's very common, right? In cultures where emotional expression is not encouraged. And sadly, that still happens, right, to a lot of boys, men, right? Also girls, don't get me wrong. When someone feels deeply or thinks deeply, people around them often say, right, you're too much, don't think so much, don't feel so much. It's not because something is wrong with you, right? It's because they didn't have the emotional capacity for that depth. And in many cultures, there is a rule, yeah, as you said, help others, but not too much, right? Feel, but not too much. Think,
Yeah.
but not too much. Push yourself first, but not too much. And it leaves people feel confused, ashamed, and maybe even split. Who am I, right? What is the good Justin? What is the bad Justin, right? Um, should I be the first one or the second one, right? A lot of children, right, then create a personality that fits the society, family, but it's not really them, right? People, yeah, don't criticize you because you feel too much, right? They criticize you because your depth confronts their emptiness, right? They cannot deliver, so they criticize. And yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, you tell me yourself, but I don't know. I think this can have huge consequences on the child, right?
Wow. Yeah. So right. Well, and it's just been a really fascinating conversation. Um, Really enjoyed it. And, for someone who feels ready, that they want to talk, or maybe just want to find a safe space,
Uh-huh. Mhm.
how do they, what is the best way for them to get in contact with you? Because we can leave the link in the show notes. And,
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
I could probably talk with you all day about this subject, but let's give the audience a little, it is limited, obviously.
No, I would love to speak with you more. And I also realize you're teaching surfing, or?
I teach surfing. I'm a coach, so yeah, I deal a lot with youngsters. I deal a lot with
Yes.
I deal a lot with adults as well, and
Yeah.
how they cope mentally,
And,
particularly in
uh-huh.
competition scenarios and training, and with patients. Yeah, all that kind of thing. I'm also writing a book. I'm writing a novel, which is it's quite influenced by a lot of things that we talked about and what you talk about.
Lovely.
Yeah, what I'll do is, when I finish this novel, I'll send it to you, because I'm sure you're going to find it very interesting, because it's a little bit touches on this idea of abuse, and
Uh-huh.
but it's told through the story of a girl, but
Uh-huh.
it's also there is some hints of abuse, but it's also how civilization abuses nature as well. So it has a sort of grander theme. But yeah, when I finish with it, I haven't finished it yet, but it could be another 2 years before I finish. But I'll send it to you,
I
and see what
would
you think.
love, I
Yeah,
would love to read it.
has a
Really.
lot about
Because,
Lisbon as well.
yeah. No,
Um,
really, I would love to read it. I'm right now finishing my new thesis on female sexual identity in 21st
Brilliant.
century. It's an analytical study of millennials and Gen Z that I will present
Oh,
now
fantastic.
in like few months. I have an
Okay.
amazing professor,
Yeah.
supervisor, Martin Yandel. So grateful for him. Anyways, let me speak about it more, because I will not stop. But yes, maybe we can have some conversation about that more.
Yeah, that would be
Yes,
great.
yes, yes,
Love
yes.
to.
I will
Yeah.
probably publish it. Yes, so I
Okay,
think
brilliant.
in either case, I would love to send it to you. Maybe you'll find some inspiration. And
Yeah.
yes, super great. I don't
Let's
want
set a
to
date.
take.
We'll set a date for that, so that we will have a conversation again. Maybe do we do another podcast, and we go a little bit more into the specifics of the book, and that is a fascinating subject. Zoya, thank you so much. And I don't let me forget to ask you to send me some images and some video and stuff for the Instagram reels and posts to advertise this episode. I really appreciate your time. I know you're very busy, and I know that your time is precious, like everybody's. But I really appreciate this conversation and your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you
No
so much.
problem. Thank you,
And
Zoya.
yes, okay,
Take
okay.
care.
Then we speak, and I wish you all the best. Okay, bye
Yeah,
bye.
you too. Hang on the line, and I'll just close up here.
Ah,
I'll do a closing statement. Hang on the line. We can talk further.
ah,
So I would like to thank Zoya, and that was fantastic. You can reach her on her when you want to speak, when you're ready. You can book your first session with Zoya at zoyamesaric.com. That's ZoyaMesaric.com. I think you can also possibly follow her on the Instagram and LinkedIn. And so any information, books, or if you want to start looking into having sessions with her, you can reach her through those links that I'll leave in the show notes and the show summary. This is Justin West, Podcast Portugal, out. If you haven't already switched to Revolut, now is the perfect time. I use Revolut Personal to manage my everyday money, spending, saving, sending across borders. You can hold over 30 currencies, transfer internationally at great rates, and even earn daily interest on your savings. It's smart, fast, and used by more than 60 million people worldwide. And if you run a business, Revolut has even more powerful solutions. Revolut Business gives you a global account built for growth, multi-currency accounts, team cards, spending controls, international transfers, and easy ways to get paid. It's streamlined, affordable, and designed to scale with your business. Here's the best part. Sign up for Revolut Personal with my link below and join me on one of the most advanced money apps available. And if you're a founder or a business owner, use my Revolut Business referral link and get your first month with no subscription fees. Whether it's for your personal finances or your business, Revolut has you covered, all in one place.
It's keeping me from my romance, that's the history, the mystery of the century.